not a threat, if they ever were indeed alien craft and not just misidentified objects in the first place.
Quote-unquote Robertson panel, quote-unquote not a threat. It's your fucking answer to the fact that they needed a reason to close Project Blue Book after they already used the poor man that was dragged through the mud, J. Allen Hynek, who was forced to debunk all these alien visitations and UFO sightings, where it ended up flipping him into a believer because of how much he had to lie for the government. Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, what was the last episode that we brought up Hynek on? I think our last alien episode we talked about Hynek a lot and this whole phenomenon, right?
Hudson Valley Triangle.
Hudson Valley Triangle. Yeah, so if you want to know more about all of that, go listen to our Hudson Valley Triangle episodes. But what the Robertson panel ended up deciding was that while the UFOs themselves were not dangerous, the ideas of UFOs were. Ooh. See, America was fresh out of the Korean War at this point, which, the Korean War was essentially a proxy war between us and the Russians. The Russians had backed the North, we'd backed the South. And while Cold War paranoia was not yet at its zenith, the military was extremely concerned that a sneak attack from the Ruskies could come at any moment.
And it still can!
Yeah, I feel like they're making all of these decisions while eating white bread with liverwurst. Just like Walter Matthau in the movie Charade. I feel like they ate a lot of that.
It's so good. You get some raw onion on it with some really, really intense horseradish mustard. You could never kiss like a person you love ever again.
Right.
But it's an incredible sandwich.
Okay.
But with all the UFOs being seen on what seemed to be a daily basis, it was thought that the public's, and by extension, the military's minds would be muddled by all this UFO talk, and the Reds would be able to slip right through.
It's very interesting because there were UFO sightings in the early 1950s above the White House. That was a lot of people called them in. Pilots called them in. It was a well-documented sighting, and they weren't concerned about the aliens. They were like, okay, whatever, we'll get to that. But mostly they were just concerned about, we've scrambled jets to go after these UFOs. The Russians will just attack us one of these times. Mm-hmm. And what if they're making the UFOs? Because now that's a whole other side jaunt to this whole story, is the beginnings of people, like, whether it's a kind of a chicken and the egg scenario, whether you believe somebody if you believe Philip Corso, that wrote all of the book about Roswell, but the idea is that when Roswell when the ship that crashed at Roswell, they were trying to like retro make it into a UFO of their own, and there were several countries trying to make these like weird saucer-like planes. So they were thinking that, number one, this could be a foreign technology that's coming to attack us. And number two, the people that are propagating the belief in the extraterrestrial version of the story of UFOs could be filled with communists that are using it to distract us.
I just don't feel like they had that technology because they had satellites so easy, a dog could pilot it. So maybe they weren't quite there yet.
Maybe. Now, after the Robertson panel, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, known for cracking down on subversive cultural elements in America, gave his own 2 cents. Okay. He started to think that the commies might start infiltrating UFO groups like Albert Bender's IFSB. Hoover's thinking went that one of these guys in one of these groups could create a panic were they to gain enough credibility. And that panic would distract the Air Force, which would leave America wide open for a sneak Russian attack.
That makes all the sense in the world, Mr. Hoover. Thank you for coming into the war room today to tell us your strategy and plan.
Yeah, and the whole Russian thing, that's in conspiracy thought, too. Now, if you'll remember, we covered Roswell very extensively. If you'll remember from our Roswell series, one theory about the 1947 crash is that the craft was just a Soviet experimental aircraft stuffed with deformed Russian mental patients sent to create an alien panic that never happened.
It kind of did happen, didn't it? Area 51, we all know it.
But that's the thing, it wasn't ever a panic. It's more of, it is a
fascination
and a distraction, but it was never a panic.
And a great destination for tourists.
They were afraid it was going to become a panic.
Right.
But I will tell you what, the one thing that theory taught me to never do is open a piñata in Russia, because I never want to see that shit.
Oh,
I never
my
want that to be.
goodness. No.
Yeah, and the alien question was so burning in the minds of the government that J. Edgar Hoover actually sent out for a copy of Gray Barker's book, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers. And that's actually a matter of public record.
Really?
There are many records on the book that showed that J. Edgar Hoover was actively researching these UFO groups. He really felt, I mean, obviously we know how paranoid and how awful J. Edgar Hoover was, but he went deep into it. So there is a whole world of feds investigating these UFO researchers that I honestly think is the first indication of where these Men in Black stories came from.
Sure. I mean, it seems like they're taking these people a little too seriously, aren't they? It's just a group of guys getting
Fuck
together.
you. No,
I mean,
it's
I'm
real.
just saying, but if you're J. Edgar Hoover, like, we got really big issues going on, civil rights, war, all this kind of stuff. It's interesting that they took all the time to investigate these folks.
It shows how seriously they took the UFO issue, and how then and since then they have been ridiculing the issue, and saying that people that believe in UFOs are cranks because they don't have the answers that they are supposed to give to the American people to create the stability that they crave, to keep their fucking corporatocracy going.
Or they do have the answers and they're not telling us.
Yeah, I mean, the American government can't go, I don't know.
Whatever.
No.
So pretty soon, J. Edgar Hoover started sending out FBI agents out and about to ask a few questions. And it just so happened that the Robertson panel, which was top secret at the time, was formed the same year that Albert Bender had his experience with the Men in Black. In fact, Gray Barker, author of the book that first mentioned the Men in Black, got a visit of his own from a few guys who were particularly interested in the IFSB. Wow. The story goes that a few weeks before the visit, Bender had printed out business cards for his IFSB book friends. And he gave Barker a set of business cards that named him as Chief Investigator.
I love nerds so much because we all love, because I'm the same way. You know, I love a lanyard, as we've talked about with my MUFON VIP Investigator lanyard. I love it. It makes you feel secure.
Right.
It's nice to have the card, because then when someone says, like, what do, you don't have to say, I live with my stepfather. You can say, I am Chief Investigator of the IFSB.
Yeah, I love that they all live like Buzz Lightyear before he found out he was a toy. Like they are very serious about their mission, and they're really into their roles.
Yeah, but these guys, you can also tell they have back then at least, they had a little bit of a sense of humor about themselves.
Okay.
And they were also, they weren't quite as serious about all of it. They were having fun. In other words,
I mean,
these guys were having a ton of fun with each other.
To get it, I mean, this is the before Vistaprint. I mean, it's tough to get a card back in the day.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Which one of you listeners remembers the free Vistaprint business cards? Because I used to have piles of those that I got for some fucking reason.
Yeah.
No idea why.
Yeah, didn't even have a job and I still had them.
Yeah, great idea. The first step to a career. This stupid ass little piece of paper.
Well, it was these IFSB business cards that brought the FBI to Barker's doorstep. Now, Barker said that he'd only given a few of these business cards to some close friends, and as far as he knew, they all still had them.
What, the FBI was like, they got business cards now, it's getting serious?
I guess, because according to the agents that were asking the questions, one of those cards had been found in the pocket of a mysterious man who had shown up in a Florida hospital suffering from unexplained seizures.
Okay.
But apparently, Barker's assertion that he knew of no such man satisfied the agents, because all they did was thank him for his time, and then they left, and they were never seen nor heard from again.
And that's not the only one of these types of stories. There's another story that is about a man named Harold Dahl that sighted a crashed UFO on Maury Island in 1947, 3 days before Kenneth Arnold observed his UFOs, and he saw an object crash. He went and he was flying above it. He went and he looked at because he was another pilot. He saw a bunch of weird white metal spread along this beach. he got his friend Fred Krisman to fly him back over to go pick up a bunch of this metal, and then eventually they didn't know what to do with it. So then the story of Kenneth Arnold came out, and because he was like, they called him and said, "Would you come and help us deal with this our own UFO story?" And he showed up. They were paying him. They were all like going through all of this weird metal, this white, heavy, like very like light for what it's supposed to be metal. And then all of a sudden, this guy just showed up. The fucking G-Man showed up, and he was like, "Hey, so we're gonna take all this. Where you guys didn't see any of this shit, or we're gonna throw you in jail forever. And peace." And just left. And it was like they don't even know how he fucking heard about the story.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems like there's less alien crashes or UFO crashes than before. Maybe they're becoming better drivers. Is that possible? Is that possible?
Well,
navigating our environment better.
Actually, that is kind of sort of a theory that we're going to get into the next episode when we start talking about aliens and saying they navigate the environment better and know a little bit more about our dimension.
All right.
Or our time. And it gets better as the century marches on.
Okay.
Well, Barker was by no means the only person being visited by the Men in Black in 1953. That same year, two of them showed up in an attorney's office in parts unknown, as the story was told to UFO investigator Harold T. Wilkins under condition of anonymity. Cool. According to the source, two 6.5-foot tall, abnormally thin men dressed in the classic Men in Black suit, black fedora 1-2, appeared one day unexpectedly in the attorney's office where the source worked.
Interesting.
These two men were immediately given high-level jobs within the company, but no one but the head boss knew who they were or what exactly it was that they were supposed to be doing there. But what people did know was that the two men weren't normal. For example, their wrists and hands didn't seem to have any joints at all.
Really?
And they appeared as if they had only a vague notion of how a human acted, as if they had just skimmed an informational pamphlet a few days earlier.
But it's weird with them where it's like they didn't know how doors worked. They would walk up to shit and be like, "What is this apparatus?" And they're like, "That's a door. How'd you even get in here if you couldn't use it in the first place?" And so it's like the high strange just kind of starts immediately.
Interesting. It would be hard to open a door without bones in your fingers.
Yeah, I suppose so, if you had no joints or anything.
Right.
But, that's the thing. Maybe they were just some sort of vegetable material that could be bent at will.
Could be. Or they could only enter places that are the push door. Then how do you get out?
Well, in addition to all that, these guys also had superhuman strength. On one occasion, one of the guys, despite being impossibly skinny, put his hand on a metal filing cabinet to steady himself. And when he removed his hand, his fingers had left indentations half an inch deep.
Cool.
Tofi.
Yeah, like me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thin on the outside, fat on the inside.
Well, of course, one of the employees who were freaked out beyond belief called the FBI, as one did in those days when suspicious characters were about.
Wow.
But the MIBs must have gotten word, because by the time the FBI showed up, the strangers were gone.
Interesting.
Today's last podcast on the left is brought to you by Blue Apron. Skip meal planning and get straight to cooking with Blue Apron. Enjoy unforgettable meals inspired by the vibrant cooking of the Mediterranean, like seared salmon and spicy orange salsa. Centered around fruits, veggies, lean meats, and plenty of olive oil, these recipes are deliciously nutritious. With incredible ingredients and chef-designed recipes, Blue Apron lets you see the power of what food can do. Blue Apron delivers farm-fresh ingredients and step-by-step recipes to your door, and the menu changes every week based on what's in season and is designed by Blue Apron's in-house culinary team. Blue Apron offers 3 plans: the 2-person meal plan, the family meal plan, and the wine plan. We here at the Parks Hidalgo household love Blue Apron because, we are extremely busy people. We both do a lot of podcasts, so we don't have a whole lot of time for grocery shopping, and that's why it's wonderful to come home and have a Blue Apron box sitting on your doorstep. So check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free at blueapron.com/LEFT. That's blueapron.com/LEFT to get your first 3 meals free. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
Now, these are just examples of what I would say is the more normal half of the Men in Black stories.
Wait, what?
Which is where
That was the normal half?
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
Can I get a Bud Light line? Because I don't think I can handle all. If that's the normal half, I think I got to check, please.
This is the shit where Men in Black are very scary. There's a part of it where we're about to head into the high strangeness area of the Men in Black. The part where they kind of jump the plot, where they go from being misconstrued G-men to being the demons of the ufology world.
Okay.
So on September 11th, 1976, Dr. Herbert Hopkins, a general practitioner who practiced hypnotherapy, received a visit from the Men in Black concerning an alleged alien abductee the Hopkins had been working with named David Stevens.
Oh, all right. And that's when they had really, really nice pocket watches to put you to get you into that zone.
Yeah, that's where you have to be, and then they suck your dick first.
I don't
That's a
think
part
that
of the
they do.
process.
So David Stevens' abduction was pretty run-of-the-mill, but it still caught the attention of the Men in Black, which is actually fairly common in these cases. And it's actually rare that the Men in Black show up on the scene of a sighting that's gotten a lot of media attention.
Why is that?
We'll get into it.
Okay.
We'll get into it, kids. So just be
I'm
patient.
just asking questions here.
So one night, Hopkins got a phone call from someone claiming to be from the New Jersey UFO Research Organization, a.k.a. NJUFRO.
Yeah, Najufro, man.
Thing was, though, the NJUFRO didn't really exist.
What do you mean?
There was no NJUFRO.
Well, then who called?
The Man in Black did.
Oh, my.
From Jersey.
Oh.
But Hopkins took the stranger at his word and invited him over that very same night. And this here is another fairly common occurrence when it comes to Men in Black encounters. Oftentimes, people go completely against their normal instincts and will invite these strangers into their home without ever really questioning it. It's only afterwards that they realize that they let a weird, skinny stranger in a black suit into their home just because the weird, skinny stranger asked.
Yeah, now, I mean, that is, how lonely do you have to be to just be like, well, you've asked, so of course you can come over. You gotta cross-check it with how many friends you have in common on Facebook. Like, you gotta do a whole thing.
It's also very similar to the stories of the vampire that we will get into also later on.
Now, in Hopkins' case, as soon as he hung up the phone, he walked to the front door to turn on the porch light for the stranger. But much to his surprise, the stranger was already in his front yard. And as soon as the light went on, the stranger walked up to the door and knocked.
Wow.
And when Hopkins opened the door, he found that the man was naturally dressed all in black, but his skin was so white that the color was closer to a corpse than that of a living being.
All right, let's not malign this well-dressed guy from Wisconsin.
No, this is what he was. He was like a living scarecrow.
Okay.
And he showed up all fucking herky-jerky, all weird, with his skin unnaturally white and his clothes just fucking hanging off of his body, just hovering in front of the door immediately after his phone call.
Yeah, and this is 1975, so it's not like he had a cell phone and he was calling from the front yard.
Right.
And there were no phone booths around either.
Oh, don't go thinking that.
Yeah, and honestly, the car phone's also a couple of years off, too, so take that out of the fucking equation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Naysayers, skeptics.
Yeah, and the weird thing about this guy was that he was also wearing gray suede gloves.
Can you do that?
What?
Can you wear gray?
Yeah, you can wear gray.
They have accessories that are gray?
No, you're talking. This is there's a lot of weird stuff that's lumped into this. This
Okay.
is what the term high strangeness means. There's many things that are going to feel incongruous almost on purpose.
Okay.
And furthermore, he had no hair. He didn't even have eyebrows or eyelashes. But the most disturbing feature was the man's thin, bright red lips.
He had these painted Joker-like lips on. Now, I mean, like, put yourself in the man's shoes for a second. You open the door. There's this gaunt man hanging there with a smile that is, in my mind, do you remember the cut scene from Lord of the Rings when they talk to Sauron's emissary? Where he does the thing where it's like, and he's like, you see...
Yeah.
It's like that, where he's just like, tell me, thank you for inviting me over. And then he has to be like, It's very creepy.
Oh,
yeah. Then he looks down and he's got a sixer of Bud Light. And
I mean, that's a
come on
different
in,
story. That's
buddy.
a commercial.
Wow.
But still, Hopkins invited the stranger inside without even knowing his name.
Well, why? Okay, all right.
Once inside, the stranger started asking questions about Hopkins' latest hypnotic regression patient, David Stevens. But as he asked the questions, Hopkins noticed that the stranger had no accent and spoke with an unemotional and monotone voice and moved robotically, again, as if he wasn't quite sure how to be human.
Wow.
This is the part that I love the most. Is that he's sitting there. He had a very strange habit. As he was asking him about his patient, he would tap the front of his mouth using the back of his fingers, which was a very strange habit,
Yeah.
which is, again, sounds like a person who's never had a habit before, where he's touching his thing.
Right.
And as he would touch his face, he didn't have red lips. It was lipstick. He literally had a hole with no lips, painted on lips on top of it, and he kept wiping them off onto his gloves. He's going, "Excuse me, there seems to be a problem with my lips. There seems to be a problem with my lips."
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah, and after the stranger gleaned as much information as he could about David Stevens, he changed tack and started guessing the contents of Hopkins' pockets.
Well, what other content could he get other than like,
I mean, that's a part of what it is. That's exactly what he got.
Okay.
But he turned to him and he's like, "Take out the coin that is in your pocket." And he reached down and he pulled it out into his palm of his hand, and he said, "Watch the coin." And as he was watching the coin, his vision began to grow fuzzy, and he started like getting double, and he looked at it and it started smoking. He's sitting there watching it, and then it changed color, and then it disappeared.
Yeah, turned blue.
All right, okay.
This was not too long after the death of Barney Hill, who, along with his wife Betty, if you'll remember, was among the first famous alien abductees.
Of course.
Go listen to our Betty and Barney Hill episodes for more information on that.
And so the creature, whatever it was, the man in black, asked him, they're sitting there, it's like, "Do you know what happened to Barney Hill?" "No, I don't," replied Hopkins. "I know that he died." "Do you know what he died from?" "A heart attack, maybe?" "No, that's not entirely accurate. He died because he knew too much." And then he said that he used the technique that he used on the coin on Barney Hill's heart.
Oh my God! And just like cut to like Mind Freak. That seems like that's some Chris Angel like stuff, but it's not. Chris Angel wasn't there.
No, he was not.
No, he
Chris
was not.
Wasn't even born yet.
Wasn't even born yet. Wow.
Yeah. And then the stranger told Hopkins that if he wasn't careful, the stranger was going to do the same thing to him.
Yeah, and that's don't let him into your house.
Well, Barney Hill, he'd actually died from a cerebral hemorrhage, but Hopkins didn't know that.
He didn't know that.
Yeah, and the stranger then told Hopkins to destroy everything he had on the David Stevens case. But then, something seemed to go wrong. As the stranger got up to leave, his speech started slowing down.
Uh-oh.
And he couldn't seem to walk straight.
He just said, "My energy is running low. Must go now. Goodbye." And he wandered towards the door, like all herky-jerky, like Vincent D'Onofrio from Men in Black,
Right.
where he's like trying to get out the door, and he can't use the door, and he's like kind of like weirdly like shuffling
Yeah.
down the steps.
Do we know for a fact that Joe Cocker wasn't a Man in Black? Because I'm fairly certain that's how he
Oh,
danced.
too big, too big.
Oh,
way too big. Got to be skinny.
Oh,
got to be
really?
more of an
Oh.
Ian Curtis to be a Man in Black.
You can't be. There's not a fat Men in Black. There's no. They're not allowed, huh?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Interesting.
So Hopkins helped the Man in Black to the door, opened it up, and as soon as Hopkins opened the door, a bright light appeared in his front yard. The Man in Black did a herky-jerky walk towards it, and both of them disappeared forever. So Hopkins was freaked out, so he immediately demagnetized all the tapes of his sessions with David Stevens, and then for good measure, threw them in the fire, along with all his notes and files.
Wow. That's what Madeline Kahn did in the movie Clue.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Flames.
Oh, I love her.
Now, here's the big question. What the fuck was that thing?
What the fuck was that thing? 'Cause that's a
Thank you,
question I
Kissel,
could
and
ask.
this is where it
I was-
works. Yeah.
I was about to actually ask that exact question without the prompt.
Well, Nick Redfern and many others think that the answer to some of the most bizarre of the Men in Black tales can be summed up with a single word. Tulpas.
Tulpas.
Do you not remember, Kissel?
What a tulpa is? Yeah, I know what a tulpa is. I know what you guys done to him.
What is it?
What is
a tulpa?
What do you mean what we done to
The
him?
tulpas?
What do you mean?
What do you think a tulpa is?
You know, I'm not gonna. This isn't a fashion show. You know, I don't gotta get too deep into what I know about tulpas.
Well, to give you a refresher.
We covered these things a long time ago.
Yeah. A tulpa, maybe this will jog your memory,
Okay.
is a kind of thought form energy ghost.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. A thought form energy ghost.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So what is a thought form energy ghost?
It's the thing that you guys did gross things with.
No.
I don't know that.
I never did anything gross with a tulpa.
With a tulpa?
No.
All
He
right.
had a fleshlight.
What do you? I don't know. That's a,
Which, and the fleshlight was very real and manufactured in
Yeah.
China.
I just used my hands.
all right.
I use that as well.
So we all know what a tulpa is.
But it's a part of it. But it's truly like, how do you explain something like this? You could just straight up say that man is lying and nothing ever happened, right?
Right.
Which is obviously a thing which does happen quite a bit. People seek attention. But the Men in Black phenomenon, this is just one example of it. Next episode, we're going to go into even more of these examples of this entity that seems to be created almost by us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
it's-
that with the use of a tulpa.
A tulpa is a being that is brought into the real world from the imagination of the conjurer using nothing but sheer will.
Yeah.
It is theorized.
No crap.
No dur.
Yeah. No dur. Yeah, yinzers.
No, it is theorized that the Men in Black are actually tulpas, created by nothing more than the sheer imagination of Albert Bender. Bender's possible experiences with the FBI combined with his own mental powers and the imaginations of his fellow ufologist cohorts essentially brought a living idea into this world.
Okay.
I have a working theory in my mind that if you are already seeing UFOs, don't you fucking laugh
No,
at
I'm
me,
just.
Kissel.
I do want to know how is it a working theory? But I don't
A
want to.
working theory means that it hasn't been proved yet and you're still working on it.
I know.
I'm working on it.
I'm not even.
Which means, and I'm writing nothing. I'm doing no math, so I'm technically not helping science at all. But my inner belief now, after reading so much about UFOs, is that I believe that if you're already seeing UFOs, and I believe that what we've talked about and especially with the Hudson Valley Triangle, is that it involves something called the M&M technology, which essentially we're 50% of the phenomenon. That we complete the circuit of seeing the UFO. Like, we bring it into existence partially because we are attempting to observe it, and whatever the intelligence it is behind it, it's decided that's the way it wants to present itself to us. And I think Men in Black are the same thing, except they are the evil side of it.
Well, then why can't we just do
Negative side of it.
Can't we just do what parents do when they're upset with their children? Be like, I brought you into this world and I can take you out, and then break these things.
Oh, I'll get into that here in a second, sir.
Good Lord! All right.
Well, the thing about tulpas is that, like all living creatures, because they are living creatures, even though if they are just thought forms, tulpas need to feed on something. And what tulpas need to survive is high emotion. Whether
Yeah, like Roseanne.
yeah, and that's whether it be like love, anger, or depression, what have you. Every tulpa feeds on something different.
Oh.
But in the case of the Men in Black, if they are indeed tulpas, what they need more than anything is fear.
Oh.
This.
Yeah, like the Babadook.
Yeah, or Monsters Inc.
Yeah. This, Redfern argues, is why the Men in Black seem to go after cases that are in the grand scheme inconsequential, like the David Stevens case.
Okay.
Now, the Men in Black, they're not visiting like the Travis Waltons of the world, the Men at Fire in the Sky guy. Because if they were to visit that guy, then they'd just be a small part of the story. But if they visit people whose sightings are more run-of-the-mill, then the Men in Black become the story.
I see.
They are psychic attention whores. That is kind of the thing, is that they have to kind of almost propagate their own existence. And if they are actually a an intelligence, if they actually are a thing that exists, and this is one of the extending fingers of the thing,
Right.
that it presents itself to our reality as this Men in Black, it will fight as hard as possible to make itself exist,
Right.
like we do, like we have to do in order to survive.
And that fear, that doesn't have to come directly from the person who opens that door. If you were all creeped out by the story we just told about the man with the bright thin lips,
I am.
that would feed the tulpa.
Oh,
You
no.